The most untherapeutic therapies at Therapeutic Boarding School, Part 1. In order to progress through the program, every student had to make a name tag and wear it for numerous days on end. The only acceptable name tags were ones that were brutal. The harsher, the better. So you get the idea. One at a time, we would have to go up in front of a room that was full of our peers and announce the worst thing we believed about ourselves or had been told in the past, like our deepest insecurity. Then we had to hear from everyone what they saw about us that was so bad, and then we made the name tag based on all of that. And like I said, if it wasn't brutal enough, we were seen as not making therapeutic progress, and our stay in the program would be extended. The second time I made my name tag, it said embarrassment because I was just so ashamed of my whole self. The most untherapeutic therapies at Therapeutic Boarding School, Part 2. So now that we were all wearing our self-deprecating name tags, we were going to be taught the consequences of what happens when we are that bad person. So one at a time, we had to go up to all of our peers, including our best friends, look them in the eye, and tell them to die. Specifically, I think we had to say, when I am this thing on my name tag, you die. And then we had to hear it back from about 15 people. That was really painful. And that exercise was intentionally designed to put us in a state of distress and upset because of what was going to happen next. The euphoria-inducing exercises. The most untherapeutic therapies at Therapeutic Boarding School, Part 3. Just a casual death simulation. And as you can see, this post was made 9 years ago. That's because these facilities have been using these healing techniques on children since the 80s. Originally from Synanon and a group called LifeSpring. The day of the death simulation, we spend the whole morning in an intense attack therapy session. We break for lunch and then we come back, the room is dark. We're told by the facilitator to lie down on the ground flat on our backs because we're going to be guided through a relaxing visualization. We're told we're on a luxurious cruise at sea, life is good, and we're lulled into a false sense of safety because about 15 minutes in, the group of volunteers screams at the top of their lungs out of the blue, and we're all jolted up. The facilitator yells into a mic. The ship is sinking. There's not enough lifeboats. Get up in front of the room. Start fighting for your life now. Most untherapeutic therapies at Therapeutic Boarding School, Part 4. In order to learn self-love and prove our self-commitment, we were forced to carry a 5-pound sandbag with us everywhere we went, absolutely no exceptions, for 3 whole months. At the end of the 3 months, a celebration was in order, wasn't it? So we were blindfolded, on campus, led into a school van, and driven out for about 15 to 20 minutes with no idea where we were going. We then sat blindfolded in the van for another 20 to 45 minutes and were taken out of the van one at a time. There were about 10 of us. It was completely dark out when I was taken out of the van. The facilitator took off my blindfold and I saw this desert road in front of me. She cut a slit in my sandbag, gave me a push and said, "Walk." I walked alone down a desert road for over a mile, the first time I wasn't supervised in a year, so 5 pounds of sand could fall out of my bag. The most untherapeutic therapies in the troubled teen industry, Part 5. This one's my personal favorite. First, we get to feast on all of the banned foods. So there's cookies, there's potato chips, there's grapes, there's even bottled water. As a reward for enduring multiple days of attack therapy and exercises that were designed to psychologically break us and then build us back up with euphoria, after eating, we were blindfolded and led down the hallway. I had no idea what was happening. Multiple pairs of hands were touching us as we walked down the hall. Enya was blasting. I was put in a chair, and the facilitator's like, "You worked so hard to get here. Sit back and relax." We're still blindfolded. Someone takes off my shoes, and I'm getting a massage. Hands and feet, baby. The most untherapeutic therapies in the troubled teen industry, Part 6. So the program had the power to take anything they wanted away from us. I mean, anything. And they called it whatever restriction. I was put on book restrictions, so I wasn't allowed to read. People were put on mirror restrictions, so they would cover the mirror in the room with butcher paper for weeks on end so you couldn't look at yourself. We were allowed 2 packets of honey at breakfast, and if you took more than 2, you were put on honey restriction. If you didn't get out of bed in the morning, you were put on bed restriction, so you couldn't sleep in your bed. Communication with the outside world was always restricted. That was just a given. And basically anything that you could consider like a basic right could be taken away at any time. The most untherapeutic therapies in the troubled teen industry, part 7. So while all these ridiculous things were going on at this facility, there were licensed therapists there. And to me, that is the most disturbing part of all of this. Licensed people enabling the dirty work of unlicensed scammers. However, these therapists did have some legitimate skills at times, given that they did have some education. So every couple months, all 8 therapists would get together and host what they called intensives. These were all-day-long lectures on various therapeutic topics. They did one on attachment theory once, so we all learned about different attachment styles. What's ironic, though, is that the nature of this industry and what they're participating in absolutely destroys any kid's secure attachment. They make sure we're absolutely isolated by banning us from our friends and family and peers at the program. It's all so backwards. The most untherapeutic therapies in the troubled teen industry, part 8. Like I mentioned before, there were licensed therapists working at these programs, and that was really important because the livelihood of these programs depends on those therapists as the selling point to parents. The therapy is what the parents think they're paying for, even though it's only a couple hours a week and no one else who works at the facility needs any licensing. What enrages me the most is that these therapists use legitimate techniques to further the agenda of this unethical multi-billion-dollar industry. For example, the way my therapist used EMDR. EMDR is a trauma therapy. The basic idea is that by stimulating both sides of your brain while recalling a traumatic event, you can rewire your brain to become desensitized to the incident. So when I was new to the program and still really didn't want to be there, my therapist told me our first target was going to be being at Spring Ridge Academy. After multiple sessions, I felt absolutely numb about the fact that I was there. That was the start of the brainwashing.